Welcome back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scale-Ups, and Early Stage Companies with your host, Jerry. That's me. And this week, I'm super excited to bring you an entrepreneur I've been talking to now for a few months. His name is Trystan, and he's the founder of Ascentix, a sports nutrition company with its first product just now starting to hit the markets. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what his journey has been like, what it's been like to bring, an edible product to market. I think it's going to be super exciting. Trystan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. So I'm 27 years old. Like Jerry said, my company is Ascentix Innovation Labs is the full name. I usually go Ascentix for short. We do sports nutrition gummies. So currently we own the only clinically dosed essential amino acid gummy on market. We are a single product right now. So gummies, that's our thing. And that's probably where we plan to stay.
I love and hate talking to young entrepreneurs. I love the passion and excitement. I hate the fact that I feel like a slug for staying in a corporate job until I was 40.
Hey man, different times, we got social media, I was like 11 whenever MySpace came out originally. So just that whole growth and being able to see the world through various lenses and everything definitely pushed me to pursue, something a little bit bigger than the 9 to 5.
Yeah, I will say social media is a mixed blessing. What you described is huge. The ability to almost travel without physically traveling. The downside is you do something dumb as a teenager and it's with you for the rest of your life, I swear. I wouldn't have my top secret SCI clearance. I wouldn't have a lot of things I have if some of my idiocy from my youth were to resurface.
Yeah, thankfully, my age bracket is like the perfect timing because social media wasn't popular enough for us while we were being bad, but now that we're adults, it's perfect. So we don't have to worry about it as long as, you aren't continuously doing crazy stuff.
For sure. And, switching gears, social media has been huge for driving my business. And I would imagine, given the nature of selling, an athletic nutrition supplement, that social media is a big part of your strategy.
Yeah, it is. So me personally, I'm not a big social media guy. So
Same.
I wanted to do the founder-led aspect of marketing and everything, which is what we are kind of getting into. But with us being so new to market, I really wanted to lay the foundation and kind of build not only my personal brand, but the company brand simultaneously. So
Smart.
people do still get that founder-led aspect of it without, just trying to guess and search who's doing it. But like I said, I got like 1,000 followers on Instagram. My most poppin' social media is LinkedIn. So I'm not huge on any platform. And I'm just doing what I'm doing, man. That's really the best way to explain it.
Well, I will say this, a couple things. We're mirrored in that too. I'm not on social media at all for personal stuff. But for business branding, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube, I've got a minuscule presence on Twitter. I'm not a really public person when it comes to personal stuff. But for business stuff, being founder led, and you've likely seen this yourself already, being a founder is a bit of a superpower. Being smart enough to create a personal brand for yourself and drive the marketing, people are going to identify with you because you're the founder.
Yeah, exactly. That's there's somebody really big in sports nutrition, Nick Bear. He does stupid numbers. I know, I don't know the exact, but I know he's been around for forever. He's founder led. There are a lot of people that I follow on LinkedIn that are founder led. Will Nitz, all them guys, Mark Samuels and stuff like that. That's kind of the angle that I'm definitely leaning into.
Yeah,
and plus, if I fail, I always have my personal brand too at that point.
Exactly, and you're not going to fail. You don't fail till you quit. I'm not even sweating that. But the building a personal brand nowadays is huge because now, for folks who don't know Trystan, he has a day job in finance, and he started Ascentix as a side hustle that he's looking to grow into more than that. But as a professional in today's day and age, not having a personal brand is a mistake. without measure. Being a founder on top of that, you're crazy not to.
Yeah, I agree. It's been kind of a balancing act. So with the 9 to 5, building a personal brand and building a business, I get a lot of questions. People ask me, well, does your job care about you posting on LinkedIn? Luckily for me, we have like a affinity group, I think is what they call it, or like an affinity phrase, value, whatever you want to call it. It's be yourself at work. So there's really no limitation. And now I'm lucky. I don't know if I worked at a very boutique or high end, very well known company, if it would be the same. But that aspect of it has been fairly easy, thankfully. Now, I can only speak from my experience. I don't know how it would be for other people.
Yeah, and I'm sure it would be different, different circumstances. I know some companies still have a pretty negative view, but a lot of companies are waking up to the fact that people are going to do what they're going to do, and people don't stay with companies forever. It's a matter of maximizing their valuable lifetime in your organization. And one of the best ways to do that is to do what you're describing. Because I would imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would imagine that once Ascentix hits a critical mass, the decision of where you want to spend your time gets easier and easier to make.
Yeah. And, it's kind of, I don't really understand why a company would look at it negatively. Just from my perspective, for one, I do my work at my 9 to 5, obviously, and then I'm building this on the side. So it kind of aligns to the company's core values. It kind of shines a positive light on the actual company too. Like, hey, look
Great.
at what Trystan is doing. He's working at this company, and I've made plenty of posts on LinkedIn, and I actually do like my 9 to 5. So I'm a consultant in finance. I actually like what I do. There are a lot of people that I've interacted with. There are a lot of people that have led me on projects and taught me a lot of stuff that have bled into my entrepreneurial life, that have helped me instead of me having to have those roadblocks or make those failures, those mistakes. So yeah, that it's win-win if you ask me.
I couldn't agree more. First of all, from a future work perspective, like I'd said, people are typically only staying in roles for 2 to 3, at most 3 to 5 years. So if you can create an environment where people are blessed to be there, they're still growing professionally, they still feel free in their personal lives, you're likely to stay longer. So it's a win-win. But even beyond that, you in particular, your LinkedIn profile is very wholesome. Your content is very professional and family friendly. So if I'm a company who's researching, another company I want to work with, and you're one of the players on the engagement team, I look at you, there's nothing there that makes me say I wouldn't want to work with them, because quite the opposite. I think that it just makes your day job look that much better.
Yeah. You just got to make sure you're handling business at the day job too.
And that's another thing you led with, I should have mentioned too, is you're getting your job done. I mean, quite obviously, if your work was falling off, they'd have a legitimate complaint to make, but you're not doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the skills, that you learn very quickly whenever you jump in the fire, especially trying to juggle multiple things. I wake up every day at 4 a.m., which I don't need a gold star or nothing like that. Like, I'm not touting that like it's really anything, but I'm usually logged on to my 9 to 5 at like 7, push out a whole bunch of work. Same thing with the Ascentix, got both my laptops open, push out whatever I need to with my 9 to 5 before most people even get in. Same thing on Ascentix. And then throughout the day, it's more like cruise control, putting out fires. So you got to handle that. And then 5 to 9, grinding, doing whatever's needed on the business side of things. Then we
That's
rinse and
awesome.
repeat.
Yeah, and that's the play. You hear a lot, and I kind of feel like these are the people that are selling courses on how to be an entrepreneur that say this. We hear a lot about these gurus pushing this work-life balance, and Becoming an entrepreneur means that, you're meditating from 5 to 7, all this craziness. But my startup experience wasn't like that. I don't suggest that you live your life that way forever. But in the beginning, you got to do what you got to do. And if that's weekends, it's weekends. If that's 5 to 9, it's 5 to 9. It's 5 to 10, it's 5 to 10. That's what you got to do to get that flywheel moving.
Yeah, 100%. You're definitely right. And then another thing that I hate hearing is, well, I became an entrepreneur to become my own boss. Well, hell,
Yeah.
you just traded one boss for 50. Shit. What the hell?
Yeah.
You're working backwards. Because what a lot of people don't understand is because, which is another one of the negatives with social media, is you get on here and you look and you see all these people like just doing whatever. But the people that are really in the weeds, like, no, my boss is the bank, the customers, my team, the people that I work with, the people that are expecting me to do XYZ. Like, oh my God, the list could go on and on and on. Like, you literally trade one boss for 100.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you, going back to what I was saying a minute ago, I feel like, again, these are people that are selling a course or selling a book, because anybody who's been in the trenches, it's just not the reality. It's just not that way. I mean, there are advantages for sure. So people may have heard me mention this on other programs. I'm a divorced dad, and I started my company so I wouldn't miss the things my kids were in. I had control over my schedule. But if I bail on work for 2 hours to go to a school play, I make that 2 hours up later. That's not off. It's just rescheduled. It's a different game for sure.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with that, with people making courses and everything, but that's like a whole super long tangent. We could talk about that for days. But I agree.
For
If
sure.
you're people that are in the trenches, no.
Yeah, I will say a couple important things in this, so people get some value from today and not just listen to two dudes talk. I will say this: there's a couple lessons in what we're talking about here. The first is this: if you're going to follow somebody, make sure they've achieved what you're trying to achieve. You know what I mean? So if you're starting a company, make sure that advice you're getting is from somebody who's, at least a few steps ahead of you, ideally a good many. But the second part is, when you're getting that advice or you're seeing something on social media that seems interesting or whatever, make sure you're comparing your company's business stage with theirs. Because a big mistake we all make is we follow somebody like Alex Hormozy and we look at his story now and we compare it to our story now. And that dude's already on the other side of 9 figures, and we're sure struggling in the low 6. So where we're at and what we're doing and what works for him now versus what works for us now, 2 different animals.
Yeah, and I can actually add on to that because I do have an advisory board, which kind of plays directly into what you're saying with as far as who you're following, who you're taking information from. My advisory board consists of 2 professionals that are within the sports nutrition space. One is in gummies, one is in just broad spectrum, like normal stuff like powders and whatnot. And then the other 2 are private equity, general business acumen people, pretty much across the board, all C-suite, which has been a great sounding board to bounce stuff off of. Because again, I don't want to harp on social media all day, but there's a lot of fake news and information that you'll go down a rabbit hole. Yeah, you'll go down a rabbit hole and be done lost all your money, lost everything, and now you don't even own the freaking seat that you're sitting in.
Yeah, it's scary. And even taking the malicious frauds out of the picture, a lot of people just talk about stuff they don't know about. It's obvious when you listen to them talk, they're just throwing ideas out. And that's all fine and well if you lead with that. Hey, Trystan, I'm new to this, but I just had this idea. Now you can evaluate that in the context of what it is. But if I say that with authority and you're like, oh, Jerry's been around a while, he probably knows. Now you're screwed because I'm throwing out a random idea and you think it's gospel.
Yeah, exactly. The unsolicited advice is very common too. So I'm definitely right there with you.
I will say this: advantage and disadvantage simultaneously. When you get a little more gray in your beard, less unsolicited advice given, and you get to give more. So that's your trade. There's a trade there. It's not all
I might have to
positives,
go dye
some
mine.
definite negatives. What's that?
I said I might have to go dye mine a little bit, see if that'll work.
You got to play the game. You got to play the game. So now that you're starting to get some real traction in your company, so far for you, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned? Like, you thought it was going to be X, but oh my gosh, it was Y.
So I mean, this is my second go round.
I didn't know that.
With launching a product. Yeah, we had an original product, which that was just me being young and just, trying to test myself and whatnot before we actually brought this one, which is actually the real deal, to market. So I knew that stuff wasn't gonna just be flying off the shelves like I imagined with my first one. But I think that you kind of have to put those unrealistic goals in your mind to kind of keep your ego at bay. Whenever you don't achieve them, you're like, oh, that kind of hurt, but that ain't gonna stop me though. It's like one of those rah moments for yourself. But I'd probably say the marketing aspect of it, I think that's probably the most nuanced aspect of business for me and my team as a whole. Like we got the operations down pat, we have the systems, like we have everything except for the marketing. And like marketing and sales, I would kind of put them hand in hand right here. That whole thing is like nuance to me. Like I'm just really guessing at this point.
Yeah, and so I come from a technology services sales background, which is probably about as useful to you as a yacht would be right now. It's just so wildly different than B2B or B2C sales, especially something like sports nutrition. You and I look like a before and after picture. So, so I'll say this: I really, really struggled with marketing too, and I've been around for a long time. I've been in business for 25 years, but marketing and services is hard. And I'm not saying it's not for you at all. But the thing that's floored me the most in the 6 or 7 different companies I've worked with is how often I'll talk to a marketing person and it'll be kind of clear that they don't know what they're talking about either. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm coming to you for advice. Don't just parrot back to me what I just said to you. Give me some ideas. And it's been a very, very, very mixed bag.
Yeah. So what we're really trying to focus on is the things that we can control, which that could be a dime for anybody that's watching this. Just, focus on what we can control. Cause the one thing that I don't want to do is get in my head. So it's like, we can have one week where we don't sell any, or we can have a week where we sell 100. Regardless, I'm centered, focusing on what I can control, because yeah, you can bring the best product in the world to market from your perspective, but if the market just doesn't like it, they just don't like it. Like you can't really beat yourself up on that. So our approach is really just getting the most eyes that we can on the product without burning an endless amount of money. And then once we do convert, make sure that the customer experience is top notch. Everybody that I've talked to that has purchased the product, I'm making sure the first thing I ask them, are they melted? Because if they're melted, I'll send you a new bag. Like, period. No questions asked. Because it's hot. We just had like one of the most hot heat waves or whatever across the country. I'm like, okay, great. Gummies, we launch. It's 150 degrees in every state across America. Nice. So yeah, that's really what we've been doing. I mean, that's probably going to be what we do for the duration of the company. That's why we own the whole, from supply chain all the way to the end customer experience right now, just because that's something that's kind of important to me.
The play is, instead of sending them new gummies, send them a cookie cutter and they just punch out the gummies.
Yeah, I have to get a 60 hole.
Yeah, or get them a cookie cutter shaped like a flexed arm, and they can have little flex arm gummies. But you said
That
something that
might be
made me
the
go,
mold.
I want to, yeah, I want to talk about, you talked about, protecting your ego. And so there's such a balance there. You've got to celebrate your wins. Something goes well, it's what fuels the fire. But you can't let that devolve into magical thinking that your 1 week where you sold 100 is now your norm and that's your level set, because that will drive you crazy. How do you balance between that celebrating wins and not getting a case of the big heads?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic. I love talking about ego because I'm huge ego guy. Um, my advisors, like I manufacture my own guardrails. Like I've done enough
Smart.
stuff in my life to understand me. Like I know me personally. It's like, okay, I need somebody that's gonna be like, Trystan, you haven't done shit. Like I need that in my life. That's why I have my advisors, and I do have like my dad and my aunt, they know how to like communicate with me to get me going, to keep me in check. Like, hey, relax, eyes on the prize, and then we'll do that. So that's how I do it. And then it's really just mentally understanding that you can do anything, but have the humility to ask for help whenever you need it,
Huge.
because you'll be running against a wall and you'll never make any progress if you think that you want to be self-made, which that's also fake too. Nobody is self-made.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I don't care if your dad's a millionaire and he's funding everything, or if you were, and I know you're not. Don't take this wrong, but you were an orphan, and you're doing this, all on your own. Nobody's 100% self-made, and owning your journey doesn't make you self-made. It makes you a decent human being. There's a balance between taking credit for what you did right and being proud of that, and being a prideful sack of crap. And if you want to discern the difference, just watch an actor's interview from Hollywood. It'll get obvious pretty quick, usually.
Yeah, and another thing too was whenever I started for selfish reasons. So like just wanting to see if I could do it, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. But as I've got more ingrained into it, like my reasoning to like keep like doing this is fading away from selfish to more like selfless. So it's like, do I really want to do this? No, not really. But it's like, man, I got so and so, they're on my team. I know if we sell so many, they're going to get another project. I got this person over here that's just looking at me as an example. Then I got, my friends on LinkedIn. They think the idea is cool. So it's like, I know if they want to see some content or whatever, I might be able to help so and so. So it's just like, that's another one of the things. Like, yeah, I have a big ego, but like majority of the shit that I'm doing is not for me. Like, you think I want to make 7,000 ads? You think that's fun? This shit ain't
Yeah.
fun, and it's lonely too. Like that's another thing people
Yeah.
don't understand. This shit is lonely, bro. Like,
I bet you that would be the one biggest surprise for most people who are considering starting a company but haven't yet. Is being alone. You said something that's important about supporting your team. I was going to say, so my first company, Influence Understood, was a solopreneurship. I did management training. It was me and my client, and that was it. And I did well, and it was fine. But I have an actual team now. I have people who are, their salaries are dependent on the work that we do. And if I feel like taking my foot off the gas and relaxing and blowing stuff off, I remember, it's not just me anymore. I've got a team that I'm responsible for, and it really changes the dynamic. It really helps drive, for me at least, and it sounds like for you as well. The other thing, real quick, before I toss the mic back to you, is the loneliness. Even as your company gets bigger, it's so crazy that you'll have 30, 40 people in your company, and you feel alone because there's things you can't talk to them about. It wouldn't be appropriate on either side of the spectrum. If you knock it out of the park and you're making more money than you ever have in your life, that's not a conversation you have with your team. There's no way that doesn't come across crappy. If the inverse is true and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to, put payroll on my credit cards this week. I'm screwed. That's also not a conversation for your team, for the opposite reason of the first. So it's surprisingly lonely as a founder. What have you done to mitigate that?
Yeah. I mean, again, manufactured. I got my advisors. I have 24-hour access to them. So, I mean, that's probably the best that you can do, honestly. I really don't know, because you can't turn to your family. You can't turn to any type of employees. A communities, I would say, probably the closest thing that you're going to get. But even then, you tread lightly. Like, if we did 10 million, I'm not going to come in the community chat and be like, we're balling. Like, I'm almighty entrepreneur, but at least you can go in there and like troubleshoot, most of the stuff that's probably going to be annoying. But like, whenever you're at your low lows and at your high highs, it's going to be pretty lonely unless you got like a super tight group.
Yeah. And I will say, I've never experienced higher highs and lower lows than when I started my business. Because there's times where you feel like you're striding on the top of Atlas's shoulders, and there's times where you feel like you couldn't figure out how to make 1 and 1 equal 2. Everything is wrong. It's just crazy, the roller coaster. You mentioned groups, and I agree, communities aren't the place for that, but a place where I've found a lot of value is a tight peer group. Like, for those of you who don't know, Trystan and I are both in a group called Thrive, a community group. That's where we met months ago. A group like that, it wouldn't be appropriate like on a lunch happy hour. But if you met 3 or 4 or 5 people in that group and you formed like an accountability peer group separately, that's a different thing. I would say it would be cool to walk in that group and say, you're not going to believe it, I just hit 10 million. That it would be cool to do, but not in the open group.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually watching a podcast the other day, and I'm kind of going to steal one of the gems that they dropped. But I mean, I would put it as like ranking, advisors and then peer mentors. So like you're saying, that peer group, like right at number 2 for like what you kind of need to have to be a successful entrepreneur. I wouldn't say it's like mandatory, but it would definitely help.
Really helps. Yeah, in my old company, I worked exclusively with technology services companies, and I would put together peer groups of companies, even if they were competitive, that were a similar size, with founders that I thought would get along well, so there was an opportunity to bond. If there were competitors in the group, they just wouldn't talk like client. That was all B2B. We wouldn't talk client names. We wouldn't talk secret sauce. But having somebody in a similar place at a similar business development level with founders that would click, that was huge. And it was one of the bigger things that caused them to grow, because you get 3, 4, 5 founders in a room, they start to get a little bit competitive. So they push each other. It's a huge thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I like that idea that you have and what you did. Another thing that I think that a lot of people think is that there's not enough for everybody. Again, it's good to have competition, but that kind of reverts all the way back to the ego. Like you can't let your ego get in the way. I mean, like, obviously, I want to crush all the competition. Like, you ask me, I got the best sports gummy brand that the world has ever seen, but I would expect that same energy. I would expect that same energy from anybody that they could own something that ain't even sports nutrition, that's a gummy, and if we were talking about gummies, I would expect them to say, no, my gummy's better than your gummy. And because I would say the same thing in return. I mean, it's no
next step, Harbro.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. But there's different kinds of competition. There's competition amongst friends, and then there's the competition that you want to crush into pulp under your heels. I don't recommend the latter for your peer group. The former is what you're striving for.
Yeah, don't get violent in the peer group.
Exactly. Very frowned upon in the 2020s. Violence doesn't have the place it did when I was growing up, unfortunately. So what's the next big thing for you? What do you think people will be excited to hear about with Ascentix and with your journey?
Well, I'll take that from a couple different angles. For me personally, and just the business in general, what we want to do, we want to try to scale to the $1 million mark. I mean, $1 million top line,
Awesome.
especially in CPG, is almost it's like the hardest thing to do. So if we can scale to $1 million, that's I'll be happy. I'll be like, I feel like I've proven myself then as an entrepreneur, proven myself, you know, what I've done. I mean, I already think that I'm successful. Like, I don't really need to prove anything else, because I said I was going to bring one of the most efficaciously dosed gummies to market. Done it. If it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Kind of like what we spoke about earlier. I think that people that enjoy the product, what they'll be looking forward to is probably new flavors. Kind of seeing what we do next. You know, creatine gummies are hot right now. We're not going down that route, but we have some B2B ideas that we're playing with on if we want to put it on the product line and whatnot. But the product line, extending it outside of flavors, is extremely expensive. So that might be like a 2 to 3 year, thing for us. But you never know what the future holds.
No, that's awesome. And where can people learn more about your gummies? What's your website? And by the way, folks who are new to the show, any contact information, anything like that Trystan shares, I'll put in the show notes. So if you're catching this on YouTube, it'll be in the YouTube show notes. If you're catching it on Apple or Spotify or one of the audio platforms, it'll be in the show notes there. But where can they find your product?
Yeah, so we're at ascentixil.com. So ASCENTIXIL.com. We're baby, so we haven't gotten retailers yet, but looking to make a really big push and try to get into a retailer, hopefully, middle of 2025. But again,
That's awesome.
Nobody knows what the future holds.
Awesome. If you could give one piece of advice to an entrepreneur, I don't mean this as a pejorative, but they're still in the wantrepreneur stage. They haven't really put their idea together yet, still not fully fleshed out, but they know this is something they want to do. What would you tell them?
Bring an MVP to market first, because then people take you legitly. They're people that are stuck in that one entrepreneur stage. They will never usually get like a lot of help or feedback or whatnot, because a lot of people waste time. So speaking from my own experience, my first product, it wasn't anywhere near what I have now. It honestly wasn't even anything that really could be competitive on market. But like I said, I was young. I was just doing stuff. I wanted to see if I could do it. And I, again, brought that up from 0 to 1. And then I used that product to pave the way for everything else. So people were taking me more seriously. People were actually giving me real feedback, which is why this product was actually born, because somebody commented on that product about so-and-so, like how it wasn't up to standard. So now it's like, okay, then we did that. But I mean, different doors open whenever you actually have something that you can put in front of people.
That's huge. I couldn't agree with you more. On not just that, but you get real feedback based on at least a partially complete idea. And when you're still just talking in the hypotheticals, if you do get meaningful feedback, which in and of itself is difficult to get, but even if you do, they're not basing it off of anything tangible. So having an MVP where they can say, hey, this tastes awful, I would never willingly consume it again. You've got something to work on. If they're like, like what you described, they didn't feel like it was where it needed to be for them to want to continue. That's valuable. It might not be happy, but it's valuable, and you can make those changes. So I couldn't possibly agree with you more. And interestingly, that's the same way with services. You've got to, if you're thinking about going to market with a service, you've got to have your service defined well enough that people can tell you what they like, what they don't like, and if they're going to move forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, a quote to just go by is, done is better than perfect. because you're always going to be iterating as an entrepreneur. Your
Yep.
service, your product, whatever you do, you are always going to be improving it until you think it's reached a maximum point of like the diminishing returns. So like obviously Oreo isn't going to change Oreo because there are so many people that already like Oreo how it is. It's perfectly fine. But most entrepreneurs do not reach Oreo status. So done is better than perfect. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. You know, it's interesting. My flagship service at Redbeard Solutions is our recruitment retention as a service program where we work with companies to become destination employers. We've been offering it now for 2 years, 2.5 years, and we're on our third iteration. What we go to market with now is wildly different than the first iteration was. And that's all based on feedback from prospects, from more importantly, actual paying customers, from people we've worked with, you know, from vendors, from everybody. And we wouldn't have been able to make the iterations we did if we didn't get that feedback, and wouldn't have gotten that if we didn't have something to show the market.
Yeah. And I mean, feedback, I think that a lot of people think that feedback is always like, oh, you got to put more in, but a lot of it is taking it out. Like we have 2 active ingredients. We could have tried to go with 3 or 4, but then you have a gummy that tastes like chalk. For a service aspect, I'm pretty sure that you might have went and put in 3 things in that service agreement, and you're like, I do not want to do this shit, and I'm not even getting that much ROI on it. Taking it out, you know. So it's
This is
definitely
all
just
time, no
complete a
money.
product. Yeah.
No, that's huge. Well, listen, Trystan, it's been great talking to you today. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you, either just to talk with you about business or, again, to learn more about your product?
Yeah, across all social medias, it's just my first and last name. So Trystan Nance, TrystinnNance. Keep it real, nice and simple, easy for the people to find.
It's the best way. You build that strong personal brand, everything else falls into place. Well,
Exactly.
Trystan, again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You've been great. I'd love to have you back anytime you'd like, especially maybe once you hit that $1 million. We can talk about the journey from where we stand today to how you got there. I'd love to do that.
Hey, let's plan for it, and that's going to give me some motivation to get to that $1 million quicker.
That sounds awesome. Well, listen, everybody who listened today, reach out to Trystan, learn more about his journey, check out his website to pick up his gummies. Trystan, did you have something you wanted to share about that, about the gummies?
Yeah, 6.7 grams of essential amino acids per gummy, 0 sugar, 30 calories per serving. Doesn't get better than that. There's nothing better on the market. If you don't believe me or if you can prove me wrong, I'll send you some money.
Nice. That sounds good. You send me some money anytime. That'd be great. Well, listen, let's wrap it up now. Thank you again, my friend, and for everybody out there watching or listening. Till we talk again next week. Have a great week. Build something awesome and be awesome yourself. Thanks again, Trystan.
Thank you.